Shalom and welcome to our newest podcast series, Good for the Jews, Inside Christian Zionism. These 6 episodes are unlike any podcast that we've ever done before. Each episode will feature a prominent Jewish voice and the voice of a prominent Christian Zionist. And we'll take a deep look into one of the most important and often misunderstood relationships today, that of the Jewish community and the evangelical Christians who stand with us. I'm Yael Eckstein, President and CEO of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
And I'm Zvika Klein, Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post.
We've discussed the overwhelming Christian support for Israel and the Jewish people that we see today, and we're going to give you a behind-the-scenes look into this historic relationship that everyone wants to know more about. We are going to answer that question and leave it to you to answer as well. Is it good for the Jews? Stay tuned. Today, we have a really exciting show. First, we have Rabbi Meni Israel as Executive Director of the Steinsaltz Center in Jerusalem, where he was born and raised. He carries on the work of his father, Rabbi Adin Israel, one of the greatest Torah scholars of the past century. The rabbi's mission is to further engagement with education on Jewish texts, making Jewish knowledge available to all, Jews and non-Jews alike. And along Rabbi is Bishop Paul Lanier. Bishop Lanier felt called by God to take part in the fellowship, where he serves as chairman of the board. And he's also been pastor of Hope Community Church in North Carolina since 1990. He is a true Renaissance man, an author, a composer, a recording artist, and holds his doctorate of ministry. And he is my dear friend. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. One of the people that it was, I think, probably the most difficult interview I did in my life was not with your father, though it was with Meni's father.
Wow.
Because, not that your father wasn't a smart person, right? But Rabbi Steinsaltz, right? Or Evan Israel, whatever, was one of the geniuses of our lifetime.
He made Jewish texts accessible for specifically the English-speaking audience.
And I remember my brain hurting, leaving his...
I could imagine.
And but also, I remember sitting in front of him, he's like, I was asking these questions, he's like, you don't really care about this. What do you really care about? And then I asked, and then I got some good answers there. Yeah. But I think it was interesting because Rabbi Steinsaltz was not... A lot of people, and, a lot of rabbis also, become more popular after they, pass away. Mm-hmm. And he was a very, Rabbi Steinsaltz was a very kind of different rabbi in any
by any
way.
Standards.
Yeah. And one of the things was, he saw it as his mission to also be this bridge.
Right.
And there weren't a lot of people like that. Definitely not in his generation.
100%.
And, that's one of the things that made him unique. But I think it's something that, definitely Meni is continuing in those footsteps.
100%. I've spoken to him when he got back from Rome and visiting the Vatican and going through all the museums. And I remember asking him, how is that as an Orthodox rabbi? He said, wow, I think it's fascinating. And he went through all the halachas around, around working with Christians and the different generations and what was happening with politics in that time. This is going to be an incredible conversation to get Meni's perspective and Bishop Paul Lanier as a Christian who knows the Christian text and the Jewish text and has dedicated his life to stand so fully with Israel. A rabbi and a bishop. This could be the beginning of a joke, I think.
Of a joke or a podcast.
Or a podcast.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take it away.
Let's do it.
So this is you kind of taking me down the lane of, Judaism meets evangelical Christianity and the relationship between them. And we have 2 very interesting guests here today with us.
We do. We have 2 incredible guests. Once again, we have a rabbi and a bishop, both of them personal heroes of mine that I've learned so much from both of them that I think we are going to get a beautiful and inspiring glimpse into both sides, from Judaism, from Christianity, into what is Christian Zionism.
Amazing. Cool. So this episode, the title is This Kosher? right? Is this okay for us to be doing this? Some people, let's say 20 years ago, Yael, right? I think this type of meeting, even though now it's virtual, right? A meeting, you're the rabbi's daughter, and then we have a rabbi who's a rabbi's son, but a rabbi. And then we have a bishop, and I'm just, some Yid, some Jew. But, this kind of gathering is something, I think, which is definitely innovative and different, even though it's becoming more and more popular.
It's revolutionary. And dare I say, not as a rabbi, not as a pastor, but just as a simple Jew like you, I think it's prophetic. The fact that we are here across the world, from Jerusalem, from North Carolina, just coming together to talk about the words of the Bible coming alive and love for Jerusalem. So I think it's an amazing opportunity that you can see where the times are.
And on a personal note, one day, Yael and Rabbi Meni, I'll have to do a joint interview with you guys about continuing your father's footsteps. That's a big deal,
The next generation.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine it. So I'm I take my kippah off for you. So Rabbi Meni, we'll start with you. So, it's interesting, this relationship between Jews and Christians. So historically, I don't know, how did this take place? Or what are the concerns that you hear, for instance, from Jews today, people who are members of, the Steinsaltz Center, and you'll be like, okay, I'm having a Zoom call with the bishop. What's their response? And what do you tell them?
Personally, I'm not really a good example for this because I spend a lot of time I have a good friends in the Greek Orthodox Church. My actually last tour with my father was to meet the Pope.
Wow.
I was a Hillel rabbi. I was a chaplain in the university. Over there also, you have a lot of connection to the local other religious domination. I think it's very important. Obviously, being Israeli, so you allow me to be more blunt, the biggest fear of everybody is, oh my God, these Christians will come and convert us all to Christianity or anything else. And really, the hidden agenda is that. That's, I think, the main concern I hear from people, not from my own people. The community that we have around the Steinsaltz Center is, again, we into this. We into the conversation. We think that Jewish knowledge is the key of many elements of one's life. And we think that the benefit of learning and reading the text in its own language in that notion is very meaningful and useful for any relationship. But I think that's the biggest fear of people. I try to explain the obvious reason is you need to have, if you have a strong faith, none of this should be any issue to go and explore. Again, but you have to really to know who you are. If you don't know who you are, really don't talk to anybody. Dangerous. You might do much more crazier stuff than changing religion. The idea of listening to somebody and finding a way that faith become serious is really when you know who you are, you know what you are and where you're heading.
Right. And Bishop, I'm curious, and on this podcast, we speak to, many Christian leaders as well. And what I've been hearing kind of repeat itself is that Jews are very hesitant about possibly being in a relationship with Christian, congregations, communities, or religious leaders. And I'm wondering how you kind of, where do you see yourself in that situation?
Well, first of all, none of us should be surprised at the concern from the Jewish community. Okay, well, we're curious, we're interested, but we're also concerned. What does this mean? What do you want from us? What are you trying to? And rightly so, because our conversation, there are massacres, there are a host of hideous crimes against humanity inflicted under the shadow of the steeple. And so just, I don't know what it was, just a few months ago, we were in Auschwitz and we were getting ready to leave, and there's a building that's a part of the facility and there's a cross on it. And I stopped and I said to the people that were with us on this trip from fellowship, I said, that's it. That's what we have to get over, this idea that we have to come in and save an atrocity and insert a cross and say, we're here now, we'll save you. And that wasn't us. And there's a justified concern of what will you say, what would you do, what are you trying to diminish, take from us?
Wow, that's definitely fascinating and, moving. So thank you for that.
So I'm wondering, Bishop Lanier, as a Christian who grew up many generation pastor, that your father was a pastor and you grew up in the church, you were literally born into the church, and not in a big city that there's lots of diversity. You probably never even knew if there was a Jewish community nearby. How did you, as a young Christian or older Christian, I'd love to hear your story of how did you start to care about Israel at all? And not just care about Israel, as we're having this podcast that people won't be able to hear it, but in back of you, you have a huge Israeli flag waving proud behind you. Your life is Israel. I've seen how you've come to the war zone of Israel, how you lead your congregation to stand with Israel and pray for Israel. Even if congregants leave, you say, well, then we're not the right church for you.
Totally.
How did your love and care and passion for Israel develop?
First of all, that cross is from the Lebanon border. So
Oh, wow.
got it. And when we were there up north, maybe a few months ago, he wanted me to have it. And right here is one equally large from Sderot, where a man who took 2 bullets that day took out his pocket knife and cut the flag down of Sderot. And it's framed. This one is not. I wanted it to be bloody. I wanted it to have the sweat, the tears, and the whole thing. The crux of the question, Yael, was how, what, as you noted, all my great-grandmother helped start a church in the Depression, both grandfathers on both sides, fathers, cousins, everybody's in the ministry. And so if you would ask us how do we relate to the story of Israel? Absolutely. I mean, in our scriptures, it includes, of course, the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian scriptures, and we lean wholly, completely, without question, into the Hebrew scriptures. Most of us ignorantly, not having a clue really of we think of it, and God, don't let me say this wrong, but we think of this as, it was those Jews who wrote that, not today's, so we compartmentalize dangerously, and we can talk about Bethlehem, and we can talk about all the geographical and all the stories, but we think somehow that Hebrew scriptures, some of that, we ordered it from Amazon. It doesn't come from the same, we lose that rootedness, that we don't exist. If Israel doesn't breathe, if they don't inhale, we don't exhale. It's for us. That's the way it is.
Rabbi Meni, I know last time we met, you were just coming back from Rome, and you said it's one of my favorite places, and I love touring the churches and meeting with the Christians there, and I was shocked. And I remember asking you, how do you relate to that halachically from the place of Jewish law? There are lots of questions of if you're allowed to go into a church, if Christians are considered idol worshipers or not because of the Trinity, and you are so well versed in this from a Jewish law perspective. Could you give us a little bit of how you relate to it through the eyes of Jewish law?
Even before Jewish law, the notion I have and the notion I grew up is always that to look on the greater good. When I go, there's too many. There's a split personality. When I go as a representative of my organization, representing the state of Israel, representing motion, movements, and so on and so forth, when I go to a church, I go for a meeting. And they're sitting around me. It doesn't matter. We're going to go and have a meeting, we have a conversation. If it's for the greater Jewish people, I'm going to go in. And again, I'm more than happy to welcome them to my own humble synagogue and my office. Of course, everybody's welcome. But that is before, this is coming before. It's superseding everything. Really, when we do things for the greater Jewish people in the greater world, we have to take this action. Now, when it comes to Jewish law, there's a debate about it, and people should know about it, but then about how to treat Christianity. There are people who were influenced from the Divrai Halacha, Divrai law, that's referring to the Trinity as idol worship, as it's not one God, it's not two gods, it's three gods, even though it's not what it really means. But that's the presumption people have. The iconography, the crosses are not helping for that notion, because when you try to explain to somebody, look, this is not idol worship, the response is, wait, but is Jesus on the cross? It's quite of an image. If you go to Rome, there are many others. I mean, the Basilica of St. Peter is full of statues of every pope, every saint. Like, However, there are other rabbinical opinions, notably foremost the Meiri, who says it's not that. We, as Jews, have responsibility. We believe in the unity of God in a very wholeness perspective that is nothing can change the unity of God. Other nations don't have that responsibility. As long as they believe there is one God in the world, the interrelationship between the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit can be explained in a way that will not be considered as idol worship. That's the second reason. Third, most people, when they travel the world, when they go, let's say, to the Vatican, are not going because of their religious pursuit. They're going as an architecture, as art. The Vatican Museum is one of the largest museums in the world, if not the largest, per se, of medieval, Renaissance, even Impressionist collection, quite impressive. And I keep saying this story, which is one of my early childhood memory of my parents. My father was invited by the president of Italy, Mr. Andreotti, and we had a week in Rome with all whatever comes with full government, full presidential visit. And one of the days, we went to the Vatican. It was my father, my mother, my brother, my sister, entire family. We walked. I was 13, 14. And I remember walking, and you would walk to the entrance of the church. You go all the way to the museum till you reach the Sistine Chapel. But in the way, there's a huge hallways of depiction of the Passion, depiction of art, depiction of all generation. And all of a sudden, me and my brother and my sister lost my parents. We lost them. They just disappeared somewhere. So we had to retrieve back, and we go back. And it's my mother and my father sitting in front of one of the biggest pictures, biggest of art of the Passion, and they arguing who did it better. I think it was Raphael and Botticelli, or again, I might be wrong. It was a few years ago. But the idea was, if you go to a place, you need to appreciate the art, you need to appreciate the nature, the culture. But again, also as a Jew, as the dear bishop said, we remember the past. We're not blind. We're not deaf. And, it's part of the beauty of it. We survived this. It's another way of looking at it. But also the appreciation that you can have in relation with a human being. I asked my father, and it's really my favorite story about my father was the church. So after we finishing the trip with the Pope, and we in the plane. So my father actually had a stroke a few hours later. It was really the last question I asked my father. Happened to be about the Pope. But he was conscious after, but again, he did not speak. He said yes, no, but not more than that. So I asked him, so dear father, what did you and the Pope spoke about? What was the topic conversation? He said, look, like every good two old men, we spoke about women and food.
Wow.
But after we all the laughter, I asked him, okay, now, right, we got the point. Now what's the message? Instead, said something that is really profound to me and lead my perspective on my relationship with Christianity. He said, I came to the Pope and I told him, it's about time that we stop dancing the cha-cha and start dancing the tango. The relationship needs to be solid and close because we are trying to achieve something for the greater good of the world. We're not just doing it for our sake. We're not doing it for ourselves. We're doing something beyond ourselves. And for that lead, there are people who believe in faith, believe in one God, in the divinity of the Almighty, have the responsibility to bring the word really outside. Doesn't mean everybody to be Jewish, doesn't mean everybody to be Christian, but the faith and the care and the moral law has to be passed to generation outside.
Can I just say how revolutionary?
Yeah, sure.
Because a much smaller example. I have a young lady in this ministry, this congregation, and she was in a painful custody battle for the children in her family, two little boys. When they went to court, her ex-husband's attorney charged me and this congregation, we had no idea it was coming, with being a cult and that the children were being exposed to being involved in a cult. Why? And this is what it came down to. Because I was chairman of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, and that in our sanctuary, on the altar, we have a crucifix as a Christian, but we also have a menorah. And to have both of those was threatening and even a defense against being able to accuse us of being a cult and thus disqualifying the mother from being able to care for her own children, because at one time we thought interfaith dialogue was good, but not this.
So I actually wanted to get back to you, Rabbi Meni. You spoke about the relationship between Judaism and Christianity, and also the stories about your father. The bishop said that it's revolutionary, and your father was revolutionary. So it's not really a surprise. So Yael sent me an interesting quote from Charisma News from a while ago, a few years ago, and it says there, Christianity was birthed from the womb of Judaism. So I wonder kind of if you agree with this, and as a rabbi, how do you understand this?
Any reading of the New Testament and the prolific work of the fathers of the church will get you to the same understanding, but really based on Jewish faith. And therefore, in a way, we gave birth to it. And again, I'm quoting the Pope because it's easy. And he said, we are the oldest sister. We have that notion in us that was the gift of what Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob got. The nations of the world be blessed by you. That is the only silver lining in the sense of going from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was that promise that the nations of the world be blessed by you. What does it mean? It obviously means that we have the responsibility to bless the world. We have to be, we like to say, light to the nation. It doesn't mean that the late nations are dark or in darkness. But our job is to really enlighten the world, make sure that the blessing that we got will be able to reach the other world. One of those blessings, one of those things is our faith. Before we started it, people were pagans. Again, I know there were small and theistic religions in Egypt and other places, but as a movement, we were the parents of it. We created this idea of believing in one God that for the most part is unattainable by sight. You actually have to believe, in the essence of what religion is, to find in God is the search of oneself in the divine. And that it's something that Judaism gave to the world. Now, there's many interpretations of it. Look, thank God we have, we know Talmud, we have enough opinions about everything, including what God is and what religion is. But I think what the quote says is really we gave birth to this religion. I'm not sure, again, and I'm going to be controversial, that as much as we gave that birth to Christianity, I'm not sure that we did the same thing to Islam. There's a connection, but it's not the same. The quotes and the connection, the interconnection of the text is much more obvious. It's much more clear in the New Testament than the Quran. And you can feel the closeness of it. Yeah, especially in the early centuries. So I think that's what it meant. We gave it at the birth, and thank God, these multiple children, grew up profoundly well, and they becoming impressive and nice. Sometimes, as we know, some children behave badly to the parents. Okay, and we went through this, but I think right now, if we ask the world, the recognition of what Judaism gave to the world is tremendous vis-a-vis this particular aspect of giving birth to Christianity.
I think it's fascinating. I've heard so many Christians talk to me about how in order to understand Christianity better, they actually read the Chumash, the Jewish text, the Old Testament, with Jewish commentary, and then it helps actually strengthen their understanding and faith, even in the New Testament as well. And so, Bishop Lanier, I know for your birthday, actually, I got you Rav Steinsaltz's Chumash that I know you've been.
Oh, cool! What a small world! It's all the worlds connect in this conversation.
So, can you talk a bit to what Rabbi Meni was saying about if you relate to that as a Christian, how it's through. And I've heard that before, Rabbi Meni. It's a beautiful concept. So I just want to kind of repeat it again, because I think it's something that's so beautiful. How I understood and how I've heard it before is that Judaism was a small monotheistic faith in a world of idol worshippers, and we don't have the agenda to go out and convert the entire world. And so I've heard both rabbis and pastors look at this as, okay, maybe Christianity was sent in order to go out, evangelize, not the Jews, but the nations of idol worshippers, and be able to move this world towards a monotheistic world that we know today. So there's both the text and the deeper understanding, and then there's this kind of global divine plan and how he uses all different ways in order to bring the world to this destiny, might you say, of getting closer to him. So Bishop Lanier, I'd love to hear you say a word or two on how and if studying the Hebrew Bible with Jewish texts has strengthened your faith as a Christian.
Yes, ma'am. As you know so much better than I do, chapter 11, nations came together trying to find their way, 70 nations. And when that was obviously chaos, confusion, and failure, God said, I'm not using any of you. I'm starting over this whole conversation, one man, one woman. And that then rightly, all the nations of the world will be blessed by you. I love that phrase, about that statement a moment ago about giving birth to Christianity, or as the womb of. And I think for quite a while, the church nursed at the breast of Judaism, of Israel, until Constantine and came in and just basically started slicing the breast and cutting the mouth and saying, you cannot get. And for too much of our time, Christianity has walked around holding the umbilical cord, trying to find out who to connect to. And the worst tragedy is to say we don't need anything. And so we try to attach it to ourselves and think we supply our own identity, DNA, oxygen, the whole spiel. So I think it's really important for us to understand not simply the narrative, but the integrity for us of the conversation between what I would say was God, is God, the one God of the one Israel, with one capital city. I would say it was that the integrity of that conversation is what we are as Christians to be tapped into with the umbilical cord and remain there, and war vehemently against anyone trying to remove the breast of Israel or trying to distance our lips from it, or to detach the umbilical cord that we carry to remain attached to the dialogue between. It's not just the dialogue between. To be part of a conversation with Israel, but that we as Christians are a part of the conversation Israel is having with God.
Right. And Bishop, I want to ask you, the fact that a bit less than 80 years ago, the state of Israel was established, a Jewish state in a land where, Jesus comes from, and, a land that is, as we said about a baby coming or being born from a certain, other religion. So Israel is a country, or the historic state of Israel as well, is so connected to your identity. So, like, how does Christianity see the birth of a Jewish state on the one hand, and then what do they want from this Jewish state?
Wow, great questions. First of all, I know enough about eschatology to be dangerous and stupid, but that's not necessarily what you were asking. But I'm just stating that. But
you're a smart guy.
Yael, you rightly used the word prophetic a moment ago. And we had a consultant firm one time speak to us, and the word prophetic was included. And they said, no, we need to remove this word. And I said, not only do you not need to remove this word, you need to insert it in about every other sentence, because you have to be able, when this conversation right here is as prophetic as you're getting at our attempt to have a deepening conversation about our who we are. And they see it prophetically as a fulfillment of prophecy, that the nations, that the Jewish people are coming home. That's essential to our own sense of eschatology, of the prophetic. That's why, for me, of all the things I've been privileged and honored to do as the fellowship, sitting on a plane, leaving Ukraine or Moldova from Ukraine with 150 Jews, or being in Ethiopia with 150 Jews leaving there, coming home to a place they'd never been, but to a place they'd never left. And just recently leaving Paris with 154 Jews, coming home from the anti-Semitism there just a couple of months ago. That to me is one of the most burning prophetic engagements that I do. So what do I want for a Christian, for the state of Israel? The opportunity to bless. Pure and simple, the opportunity to bless in whatever way that means. To speak up for it, to financially participate in it, whatever opportunities are afforded to engage, not for the sake of converting. Let me just say this. Yael and I, years ago, when we were just talking about the pure elements of fellowship and the roles, we were looking at, at that time, it was not even where we are now, but with violence. And the question was, okay, if something in all of this, if Yael was not able to serve as president, who steps in? And by pure role of the position, I would step in. And I said to her, I could never be president because it would violate the integrity of the fellowship of what I joined. I wouldn't even give. I wouldn't even give to the fellowship if a Christian, because even if my personal, where I would never be a missionary, where I would never try to convert, just the image, what it looks like, sounds like, I could never do that. So I would be the presider until an Orthodox Jewish replacement could take office. I would be a presider, but never be a president, because if I do that, if I come in with that missionary comfort, I violate the integrity of what I need as a Christian. I need you to be authentically Jewish. I need this fellowship to be authentically Jewish to help preserve my Christianity.
Right. And also, I think, with, looking towards the Jewish community in Israel, right, you want them to feel as if, what it is. It's actually, Christians who care about Israel donating to a cause that they care about, right, which is run by Jews. The Jews, it sounds terrible to say this. I'm saying the Jewish leadership of the fellowship will determine what's important for the Jewish people, right? And I just wanted, you spoke about France and Ethiopia and Ukraine. So I think you hinted towards it, like you were there because the fellowship funded Aliyah, right? Oh, yeah. That's something that not everyone understands. So basically you have these, Christians in the U.S. mainly, right, who are donating $1 to $1 to $18 to $100 or $200 a month, and doing this so Jews can make Aliyah to Israel, to help Jews make Aliyah to Israel. Now, that's like, for many people, I've known and seen this for many years, it's mind-boggling. Like, how can this be? Like, why do they care? Like, why do they care? People are, why not even care? They're actually encouraging Aliyah to Israel.
Essential.
It's really interesting, Zvika, because if I could hop in here, and then I'd love to hear Bishop Lanier for you to respond to that, and of course Rabbi Meni's thoughts. But when my father started the organization 40 years ago, it was so controversial that he was brought to Beit Din, to the Jewish court, to put him in cherem, which means he's excommunicated, which means he can't join a minyan, a quorum of 10 men. He can't be called up to the Torah. People have to move to the other side of the road. And actually 9 out of 10 of the rabbis said he should be excommunicated. And he was saved that by one rabbi. But even at my sister's bat mitzvah, he couldn't go up to the Torah because a rabbi stopped him because he works with Christians. And I think it goes back to a lot of what we're talking about in this conversation. I think in the beginning, it made sense for the Jewish community to be hesitant. It made sense for the Jewish people to be very cautious and very scared. And now we're over 40 years later, where Christian Zionism, we've seen, has not turned their back on Israel and the Jewish people no matter what. And they haven't tried to, not that any of them haven't, but as a movement, they haven't tried to convert or to change or do anything to the Jewish people. And I think that what Bishop Lanier is saying is so profound for me as far as the fellowship. When he said to me, I would never be the head of the fellowship. It needs to be a Jewish person because that's the whole point of the fellowship. And what that says to me is, unfortunately, there are organizations that are actively trying to missionize Jews in Israel. And when we see that the fellowship, which is led by an Orthodox Jewish woman and before this an Orthodox Jewish man, is the largest philanthropic organization, not just out of the Christian community for Israel, but in all of Israel, raising hundreds of millions of dollars a year from Christians, and that the Christians are giving to the fellowship and not to these organizations that are actively trying to convert. To me, that's just so much proof, and it's inspiring to see how far the Christian and Jewish communities have come. Just in that fact alone, that backs up what Bishop is saying isn't just Bishop Lanier, who's obviously incredible, thoughtful, talented, and very educated and passionate and unique in so many ways, but he's not unique in the sense of Christians want to stand with Israel without trying to change us. And I think the proof is where the fellowship's at, the growth that we've experienced, and over 800,000 active donors wanting to join the fellowship exactly for that same reason that Bishop Lanier is articulating.
And for those who can't see, so Meni did wow, right?
Pure jealousy. It's going on. You shall not covet. This was it. That was the coveting.
There are wonderful organizations, some of them that are wonderful, living in the States who have a passion and they love Israel. That's great. The fellowship for me is the uniqueness is that the head is an Orthodox, that we're certain as Abraham being a blessing to all the nations. To me, of course, and I'm Jared, is that there is no peer. And of course there's no competition, but there's no peer. It must remain authentic to its Jewishness. Just to give you an example, I serve a congregation we founded 35 years ago. There's 400 people in there. We're about to reach $3 million. That now in the grand scheme of things, $3 million, I get it. But for 400 people, for 400 Christians living in a small town in North Carolina to give $300 million, to give $3 million. And just late last night, we were still going through numbers, for the year end, how did people do? The passion of this people for giving to Israel. And with every dollar comes, they listen to the news different now. They want to know, how is Yael? How is her family? What just happened down south? Did you see the ICC? What they brought to the altar? They didn't just bring an offering to the altar. They jumped on the altar into the flames and have completely become consumed in the conversation now. And they remain very interested in the whole conversation. Is Jerusalem the capital? Absolutely, yes. What about the settlements? What about Golan? They are immersed in that dialogue.
Wow.
Look, it's obvious. Us in Jewish faith, we believe in Simcha V'Ro'al Avraya. Somebody is trying to interject a certain law, a certain lien. He has to prove that the other individual actually has the responsibility, the ownership, the loan that he has to pay. You can't just claim claims without proof. You cannot just do it because you say so. I think the brotherhood and fellowship, was a much better word here, of our Christian brothers and sisters in the last 4 years showed exactly that. They proved they're not interested in anything but helping. Now, obviously, from time to time, there's the rotten apple, just an apple, who come to the Jaffa Gate and scream, is an adult for proselytizing the Jews. The Jews, I feel a lot of time very entertained by it, because usually they're sitting alone and screaming with the walls. But it's really been proved for the last 4 years that it's not their agenda. The support the Christian Zionists show to Israel in the last decade, it is something that is undisputable. I never had, again, this is my personal experience, I never had in my adulthood, actually happened to me once before, but it was not, I think, this organized group. Nobody ever proselytized me. Nobody ever did anything to try to convince me differently. Even I was sit down for a nice cup of coffee, and religion is part of the conversation. You cannot agree when you speak of a bishop or archbishop. You don't have a choice. The religion will come up there. But the conversation was on an equal basis. I'm not trying to prove the way different interpretation of this verse or that verse. It's not a conversation. Usually the conversation is, okay, who is a mutual enemies, which is always a question.
Yes.
And two, that is the negative, but the positive is, how can we do things together? Then again, on something I'm not going to go personally with you, Bishop, or with you, Yael, and go to a place where I know I'm not welcome. I'm not doing that. This is not my perception of proselytizing is exactly in that sense. I'm not into this. I want to go where people can listen to me. People are happy to hear me. People are happy to welcome me. I remember when I was when I just started my career here at the Steinfeld Center, and I went to ask my father about the policy of receiving money from Christians. It's a very legitimate question.
Absolutely.
And I asked him, and again, I was, by my father's orders, I went to my first meeting again as his representative with the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese here in Jerusalem. So I'm really aware that we have a good relationship. And my house was always had people from all faiths, but Christianity is definitely more prominent than others. And I asked him, he said, look, we have a very simple rule. Our text, we do the interpretation. Nobody can interfere in the interpretation of the text. Therefore, we take money only from Jews. However, our product, the books themselves, everybody is more than welcome to get it. We're going to give them to people. We're going to push them to people. We're going to ask people to buy them. That's not a problem. In that small detail, is exactly what you said about the fellowship. If the fellowship is not run by an Orthodox Jew, it's becoming it's not authentic anymore. There's a level of authenticism that need to be kept, and I think that's what you've done in all these years. The relationship need to be honest and clear, and it's very possible. And I tell people, I'm more than happy that anybody to walk with me into Jaffa Gate, and I will take you personally. I'll take you to the Church of the Sepulchre, and then I'll make a right to the Kotel. Or actually, I prefer the Gates of Mercy, but that's my personal preferences. But the thing, there's not a problem. The idea of friendship, fellowship, honesty, and really what the Christian world showed, especially the Zionistic Christian society in the United States, it's something that is second to none. It's unbelievable. It's very clear. And again, from time to time, I get a phone call from somebody, being depersonalizing, you're always going to have individual, but in general term, it's about 99.9, it never happens. But I think the proof, they're saying the proof is shown to the world. That is not the agenda. The agenda is to help and to care. Which again, I think it's coming from the blessing of Abraham, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. If you become the blessing of the nations it's a relationship, right? I'm blessing you, you will be blessing me. It's a part of a mirror phenomenon. If I care about you, you care about me. This is marriage counseling number one. The more love you show, the more care you show, the more the other side is reflected as well. And I think that's what was done for the last 40 years.
If I had one last question to ask him, though I want to stay on this conversation for a lot longer, but we do have to end. Where do you hope this area, both Bishop and Rabbi Meni, of Jewish-Christian relations grows to, moves to, and what do you think that we'll see 10 years from now in the area of Jewish-Christian relations? Bishop, you want to start with that?
For me personally, and I've shared this with you in private, Yael, and I never miss an opportunity to say this, that how deeply grateful I am to you personally, just simply because I know you. But thank you, because being around you and other Jewish people, and I pray that you hear my heart and not the frailties of my head, you have taught me more about Jesus of Nazareth, not Jesus Christ. That's a faith issue. That's a whole other conversation. But the Jewish Jesus, when you wake up in the morning and you just breathe Israeli air, you have more in common with Jesus than I'll ever have by the flesh. And to know that he attended the festivals and the whole thing of being Jewish. Well, it's amazing that most Christians know so little about Jesus of Nazareth. It's a miracle that we believe in Jesus Christ. And so just sitting here talking to you, Yael, as I do so often, and then these gentlemen hearing, watching the nuances, all of this, for me, it reinforces what I believe about a particular Jew that's important to me. So I'm grateful to you, Yael. I'm grateful to these gentlemen for allowing me to look in to the incubator of Israel. And where I see 10 years from now, none of us could have imagined 2 years ago where the conversation would be. We had no idea, I think, most of us did not have any idea how the anti-Semitism was it was just a dusting of facade. And I don't think we're really surprised that all of a sudden the streets erupted in violence for Hamas, just a dusting, and we saw what was really there. And so I think in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, you're going to see those persons and peoples who truly identify with the Hebrew scriptures, who truly identify with the Jewish people, the state of Israel, and are going to do so more passionately and at a greater expense. And I'm not simply speaking, it's going to cost me, it's going to cost Christians more, because some of the enemies that you have been fighting in our stead have crossed the ocean, hiding in the shadows of our cities, waiting for a moment of demonic synchronization when they're going to come out, occupy cities of the U.S. So I'm just saying, for me, I believe we're going to be pressed even closer, and our conversation is going to be deeper, and we're going to finish each other's sentences even more.
Bishop, thank you so much. And Meni, do you have a final thought?
I truly believe that in the next 10 years, as the bishop said, will be a lot more interlocking fingers between us. And I really truly believe, and I really hope that the notion of what we call Christian Zionism will also be able to cross the ocean and get to Europe, because we need help there too. I think that the American Christian community, at least those who are, as you said, the breathing the air, the understanding the concept and seeing the idea of a Jewish homeland, they understand the importance of our existence. It's still not there in Europe. I think, as you know, there's a different denomination in the church itself. I really believe that there's a lot what to learn, a lot of what to share, a lot of what to bring together. There's a lot of actions that we can do for the sake of the world. You know, when the prophecies are coming, discuss that will be a time that nations will not bear any arms. It's not only a prophecy that it's referring to after Messiah or the like. It's something that we have the responsibility to make sure it happens in our time. The shock and awe that we had after October 7th woke up not just the negativity of the anti-Semitism, which, as you said, was not a dust off, and all of a sudden all these people, rose up in arm against the Jewish state and Jewish people and the Israelis in general, but also brought a lot of unity. And if you decipher some of the evilness and some of the wickedness around, you see the care, you see the conscience, you see the people like yourself, Bishop, and others who coming forward and said, these people are my brothers, they're really my nation. In that, as we have the responsibility to teach the world moral and ideas of good and bad, that is our job. It's been the last 2 decades, the world a bit lost the notion of differentiation between good and evil, and that's our job, is to make that line in the sand to clear, this is good and this is bad, this is evil and this is light. And that's what we do. And I really hope and wish that's going to happen soon in our time, that we have redemption and we see really the glory and beautifulness of godliness in this world.
Amen.
Perfect. So, Rabbi Meni and Bishop Lanier, thank you so much. And thank you for doing what both of you do.
Yeah, I think for many people, Zvika, in the Jewish community, this support feels like it might be new and maybe even uncomfortable, like it's too good to be true. And as we've heard today, it is true. And we have both Bishop Lanier representing the Christian community, who has given us so much behind the scenes thoughts and information and motivation and ideas and real sharing your heart with us. And of course, we have Rabbi Meni, who's a personal mentor rabbi to me, that I follow his weekly Dvar Torahs and the Parsha that are beautiful. And also, of course, all of the halachic rulings that are so new, diverse, eye-opening, and relevant. So the Christian community is here helping the Jewish people when we need it most. The Jewish community is so grateful for the support. And I join all of you in prayer that it will only grow, this relationship, that we will stand together not by a shared enemy, but by a shared hope in the future of humanity, that we'll see that light shine soon.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us in this podcast series, Christian Friends of Israel and Is It Good for the Jews? I know that you must have a lot of thoughts, and I hope that we're providing lots of answers. And if you want to be engaged further with me and Zvika, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course you can visit our websites at jpost.com and ifcj.org. This is one of the most important relationships that we see growing. This is good for Christians, this is good for Jews, and this is good for the world. For the first time in history, the Jewish people have friends. And I hope that you understand this friendship a little bit deeper because of this series. Thank you so much for joining me and Zvika. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to share it with your friends. We have to get the word out. More people have to understand evangelical Christian Zionists, why they stand with Israel, and why this is so important. So share it with a friend, share it with your family, and we look forward to being in touch with you.